So my feeling is that the days of that suppression have probably come to an end. And I would expect, therefore, to see the silver price be freed, if you like, from this sort of suppressive intervention by China. I don't think they're doing it anymore. Well, it's a fascinating story. Here as you rightly point out, the silver price is extremely low. The gold to silver ratio, or is it the silver to gold ratio, is over 90. This is really crazy. I mean, the good news in this is that if you go back to the regulations of 1983, which appointed the People's Bank of China with full responsibility for managing China's gold and silver acquisition program, dealings, whatever you like to call it, then we've concentrated on gold, but we forget that this also covered silver. And we also forget that as recently as 1935, China was on a silver standard, not a gold standard. Banks held silver as, in reserve against what their customers might sort of decide to encash banknotes for. Individuals stored silver. So, that's only 90 years ago. We're sort of just in living memory for some of the really older Chinese. Now, I think it's clear to me that China used the enormous bear market in gold between 1983 and 2002 to acquire a basic holding in gold. And I did some sums in terms of exchange flows, capital flows in, export flows out, and so on and so forth, and came to the conclusion that at contemporary prices, the PBOC could easily have acquired as much as 20,000 tons. It was at that point that the PBOC set up the Shanghai Gold Exchange, which is controlled by the PBOC, incidentally, so it's within the mandate of that original legislation in 1983, and allowed Chinese citizens for themselves to acquire gold. Now, when it comes to silver, it's a different situation. You didn't have a clearly a clear bear market, if you like, in the way we had in gold. Silver even then was behaving somewhat differently from gold as a monetary metal. But there is no doubt in my mind that there was a second program at the People's Bank of China to acquire silver reserves, if you like, which would be, like the gold reserves spread around the People's Liberation Army, the Communist Youth Wing Party, and so on and so forth. I mean, there are various government accounts where all this stuff was concealed. Now, I had a speaking engagement in New York back in, I think it was about 12 years ago, something like that. And I thought I'd have a look at this and try and work out where all the silver was going and what was actually happening. And at this conference, there were a number of silver producers and exploration companies with stalls. And I asked the management on all these stalls, how did they turn their silver into cash? Because, if you're managing a mine, you're not necessarily interested in what's coming out. You're interested in what it sells for, because you've got to pay wages and you've got to pay fuel bills and all the rest of it. And the same story came from all of them. The man would come along from, rather like the man from Del Monte, the man from either Trafigura or Glencore would come along and assess the value of the dory. And on the basis of his assessment, two things would then happen. The dory would be shipped off to nobody knew where, and also the mining company got paid for it. So you've got three parties in this. You got the assessor, you got a bank, and you've also got the refiner. Now, in those days, and I think it's probably still generally true now, because refining silver, smelting it, refining, and all the rest of it is a pretty, I suppose, environmentally unfriendly business. And it's quite energy intensive and so on and so forth. The Chinese were by far the cheapest and most ready refiners of silver. So all this doré was getting shipped over to China in order to be refined. So not only that, but China was something like the fifth largest mining nation for silver itself. So you can see that by taking on this role, it could quite easily accumulate all the silver that it would need to satisfy the monetary purposes which were intended in the original 1983 legislation. And I believe that's basically what has happened. So China has now got significant undeclared stocks of silver, and it will be, in terms of tonnage, considerably more than what they got in gold, obviously. The parties involved with this were Glencore, mainly. The bank would have been JP Morgan, I guess. And the other thing, of course, is that as the silver doré was taken on board, then that needed to be hedged in the futures market. And this is why you had JP Morgan appearing in the market, selling futures the whole time. And as far as the silver bulls were concerned, thereby deliberately suppressing the price. But it wasn't deliberate suppression at all in that sense. It was just part of the whole thing. I think it was intended to hit the price because as far as China was concerned, they wanted to acquire their silver without driving the price up. So I have little doubt that the management of the price was part of this whole process. So are they still doing it? Well, I don't see any reason why they should be still doing it. There may be an argument that they would want to keep the price suppressed because they're a major manufacturer as a nation and exporter of photovoltaic cells and other electronic goods which rely on silver. But that edge is going a little bit. I mean, India's sort of muscling in on the act and all the rest of it. And I think that just controlling the silver price purely for that purpose doesn't actually make an awful lot of sense. So my feeling is that the days of that suppression have probably come to an end. And I would expect, therefore, to see the silver price be freed, if you like, from this sort of suppressive intervention by China. I don't think they're doing it anymore. Which is interesting because it could well mean that as gold continues to go higher, in other words, currency values continue to decline, on that basis, I would expect silver has got quite a lot of catching up to do.